Welcome to Foreignness and Friendship, a series of podcasts. We present a number of bonus tracks connected to our radio show. You can listen to conversations with artists and activists, reports from festivals and other larger events, essays, reviews, poetry, and letters. We see ourselves as part of a non-binary rebellion with the intention of creating a language and a human condition beyond race, ethnicity, gender, sex, and class. Tear down these walls, dismantle the statues of power, and meet the other with an open spirit. We are here in South Africa, more precisely in Stellenbosch for the Stellenbosch Triennale. It takes place for the second time this year, and we are together with the chief curator. Can I please ask you to introduce yourself, tell a little bit about your background for curating this fantastic show?
So my name is Khanyisile Mbongwa. I'm an independent curator based in Cape Town. I grew up between Cape Town and KZN. My family is from KZN. I grew up mostly in the townships in Cape Town. I am a sociologist by training. Did my undergrad at Stellenbosch University, so the connection between the Stellenbosch Triennale is also because I have some context here, having lived in Stellenbosch for 4 years during my undergrad. I'm currently pursuing my PhD. I consider myself a reluctant academic because the way in which academia is structured doesn't hold certain knowledge systems, or when they are interested in indigenous knowledge systems, it's more around co-opting them into their system, but not truly entering them in their fullness. As an independent curator, I always had an independent practice, so I work in relation with or in partnership with museums and galleries. I've been working quite collaboratively. My practice as a curator is really built from a practice of like collectives. I come from a collective culture. I am one of the founding members of Collective, which was a collective that was started in 2006 by a group of us in the township that used to sort of really investigate and engage with politics of space, or spatial politics, and what does space produce in terms of culture, tradition, and everyday living, and really looking at the idea of like legitimize and illegitimize spaces. And the city center always seen as a legitimizing space, and so what does it mean? And so this, my entry into arts in a broader sense is from this collective practice. At the time we started the collective.
Sorry, I couldn't get it. I wanted to. No, oh, okay.
You know, because you just need to stand there and
Yeah, a guy showed up, but the wrong guy.
Oh. Yeah, so, you know, this sort of coming from a collective practice, my personal entry into the arts is through poetry. I used to be a performance poet, and I got to a point where I felt like I was saying things that I didn't understand, you know, or I wasn't matured enough at the time to understand the messages that were being channeled through me. I felt that I didn't understand the weightedness of words, and so how dare I share them in public? But I also wanted to find other ways to enact the things that were in my head and not use spoken language. And so being part of the collective was also part of this, like, how does one explain themselves within the vocabulary of the visual arts or creative arts? And in relation to community building and as such. And so that's sort of, my journey. And my grandmother played a very huge role in who I am becoming, even though by the age of 60, when I was 16, she passed. But those formative years, she did quite a lot to open me up to the world. So that even though I'm I'm always afraid to write.
Okay.
Writing is something I'm afraid of, because ideas concretize on paper.
But why are you afraid? It's because you
I
don't know what goes on, or you're talking about this, that things are challenged through you, and then something comes up with.
I think there are people who are called to write.
Yeah.
I'm not a writer, but I write, because curatorial practice requires some written context to situate, to position, to indicate, to index for people and how they could enter the psychosis that is one's mind.
But it seems that you are placing yourself between different ways of expression, where maybe poetry and writing is one of them, but it is also music and it is visual arts.
Of course, I'm just saying, like, my background, I start there. I start from this poetry, and then I release myself from poetry in public facing, and I still write poetry for myself and my friends. But I'm saying, like, writing as a practice is something that I'm always, shy about. I'm a shy person in general. But my one of my mentors really pushes me to continue to write and continue to speak in public. He knows that I would always say, like, the exhibition is already speaking. What more do you want me to do?
But sometimes you have to elaborate, maybe. No, I mean.
Yeah, of course.
Or there's somebody who wants to talk to you about.
And so, writing has a tendency to fix things in a particular way, and even when your mind has moved, and so how does one continue to hold what they have said in the past, in the present, and, like, how do one, so I enjoy writing and experiencing, text and how people write, because it's important in, wayfinding, but it is something that I always find as a challenge. I'm always like, I have to write, and I have to speak. I have to write, And I'm saying all of this because I think it forms part of curating, that one has to think on multiple levels and find ways to connect the thread, and that you are the connecting thread, at least, because for me, curating is such an embodied practice. I am
You're there.
In the embodiment of the things, like, how do I live in the words that I say, and sometimes one is limited, like, capacity to exist in the things we say can be very limited, because sometimes we just have not arrived in, because that's the interesting thing, right, about theorizing and conceptualizing, it is the space that we might be moving to, that we in our everyday life have not actually arrived at, but we can write to create frameworks, we can write to create spaces for us to ground ourselves, but in practice it might take a bit longer, So that's a bit of,
So this collective process and this multiple expression forms, did this lead to being the curator of Stellenbosch Triennale, or is this Triennale a continuation of the things that you're talking about now, or how do you see your entry in this?
I think everything we do leads to where we get to, right? Whether we acknowledge it or not is something else. Like, I've worked with multiple people throughout my practice, and at the beginning of my practice, I would be in a room installing everything by myself, hiring out the space, inviting doing everything. This also then taught me a lot about practice of care, like, how does one care for artists, care for self, and I'm in a space now where I'm like, my practice is premised on cure and care, and I'm thinking about lateral care, because I think when you're a care practitioner, people just want to be cared for by you, but they don't extend the same kind of care.
Or you mean they are just receiving from you?
Yes,
or taking,
and so you have to augment that and introduce lateral care, that the structure has to figure itself or reconfigure itself to care, So if you invite other collaborators, like in this process, I've been working with Tigera Mavura, who's been my curatorial assistant, who I've been working with, how long together? Yeah, we've been working together since 2014 in various ways, like as partners, like in things that we do outside of these structures, and then as facilitator and audience. So so this is someone I worked with for a long time. So there are certain things I no longer have to explain to him. There's certain things he doesn't have to explain to me. If there's been a carelessness on either parts of our sides, we are comfortable to be not call each other out, but to speak to each other. And I think there's something, a difference between calling someone out and speaking to someone of your concern, that there's something that has happened that is not grounding our practice here. These are all things you learn in the process of exhibition making. You also learn, or I've learned that, when there's moments of tension, some people don't know how to, or let me say, when there's moments of tension, so what I've learned is that you have two choices, either to enter into a war or repair. Most people are not matured enough to repair. They choose war first. Because it's easier.
Or they just withdraw. There's also some people who are afraid of the confrontation and withdraw.
Withdrawing is a form of war.
Yeah, of course.
It's a form of violence.
Defense.
Right? So
you want to teach also, you want to treat it as a collective process where everybody kind of is contributing to making.
There's no way of making any form of exhibition without it being collaborative. This is my understanding.
Yeah.
Yes, there are people responsible on different levels. As the curator, I have to see all of it, between the artists I invite to the production team I work with, to the board that has called me to do. I have to thread it all together. And so I've learned this thing about, repair and war. Right? And it's much more easier to enter into war because you can just be angry and crazy and withdraw and utter whatever you want to say, and then
But I think we have been used through history to
that's
war.
my
So
point.
war is a very known way of social action, unfortunately. And you can look around and it continues and reproduces itself in vicious ways.
Yeah, so repair is very difficult, it's very challenging, because repair also requires us to reflect on ourselves and how we hold tension and conflicts. Repair does not necessarily mean resolution. It means that work needs to be done to repair the fault lines, and that the fault lines or the fracture lines won't look exactly as they were before, but they will resemble the tending to. What war does is obliterate. It cuts off circulation. It stops things in movement, It means that when we've entered into the warring self, everything else has to push through that warring self. These are things one learns in curating. When I speak of nimbleness in my practice, I'm speaking of this, how can I be nimble? What is required of me to enter a space of nimbleness? I was saying to someone the other day, talking about witnessing, and I was saying that when we have close people who we say are witnessing us, what we desire is for them to, when something has happened, we just want them to know. Because we've been living together doing this for 10 years, how do you still not know? But the truth of the matter is, if we're saying we're always in a constant state of becoming, the people who are close to us are also becoming in their knowing or witnessing us. So they might know certain things about us that give them the capacity to say, you might act this way, but there's always that 20% or 30% that you might do something else, something that in the knowingness might be radical. And this is when we have to give grace, when we're like, but we have been doing this for so many years. How could you not know that I would never do that? How could you not know that?
But there's also, I think there's also something left always, and I mean, we also change. But the beautiful thing is that if you're in relationships, working relationships or love relationship, private relationship, social relationship, that can follow, where you follow each other, so to speak.
Yes.
That is kind of what we would like, because then you get this kind of acknowledgement, and you also get an understanding, and you also are allowed to understand the other person.
Yeah. So like grace is the other thing that I've looking at in my practice, like who gets to be afforded grace in the world, and what does that grace look like, and who are the bodies that are seen as bodies that just must be strong all the time. And what I've come to understand that grace actually is humanity. When we extend grace, we're saying, I see your humanity, and I'm extending mine towards you, even in this moment of deep difficulty. Not everyone in the world is afforded grace.
No, I think maybe also this expression of connecting grace and humanity is very important in the time we live in, because there's a lot of examples of also throughout history how we lose our humanity and how we expel humanity, and that is something that we cannot lose, because if we lose it is a disaster.
Yes.
Yeah, we are already in a disastrous space, but I mean all the time. But I mean it can. So I want also to ask you, what is your thought about this Triennale? When I went to the talk inside Smokka the other day, I got the impression that there was a very big focus, which you also mentioning now, on sound, as part of the visuality and as part of the sculptures which also here, but sound kind of play. And if you walk around here in the area, there's also several artworks who are integrating sound.
Yeah.
So what is that something that has been deliberately done, or is it just something that happened? Or what is your thoughts about this element of sound?
I think, when you share a provocation with artists, they interpret, relate, connect, come into in whatever way. And my role as a curator is to hold the ways in which they choose to. We explore various things, before we get to see the artwork. So the thinking of the curatorial thinking is premised on jazz as a black tradition, which is, the sonics. The provocation is based on breathing and breathlessness, which is quite a sonic thing,
And it has a rhythm and song.
Exactly. But also, if you look at body as the architecture, breath is the sonic space, the sonic of the spatial condition of the body. Right.
But I think the idea of jazz, which I also have met in other kind of both intellectual work but also artistic work, is also it is not only sonic, but it's also body that is improvised body and sound, so to speak.
I think the artists, that I'm working with are also some artists who work on multiple levels, right? Like they're multidisciplinary artists, and so they also wanted to meet the conceptual framing, and wanted to hold the ideas that are in the rehearsal, improvisation, composition, or black compositional thought. And so in the conversations, they were having artists were also pushing their medium in various directions. But then, of course, there are artists like Nandele Nandel, whose practice is a sonic practice, right? Who then thought about sonics in a spatial condition by building a space where the sonics can inhabit, exist, and be experienced. There are artists who, I invited filmmakers, and it so happens that all the films have sound. Some films are silent films, so one has to actually speaks to that, the sonics of the moving image and what that means. Then there's artists where sound happens, but it happens in a way by entering a space, like Manyaku's artwork. The sound happens when you walk onto the charcoal. In Simpwe Mutele's work, the sound happens when you are shuffling your feet on the reed mat. So there is some form of sonic mapping that happens by its own.
Okay, so it was not something that
I
you
pushed
just
for.
decided.
No,
but
I didn't
you had
push
this
for
theme
it.
about breathing and breathing. So there is kind of some sonic element in the cultural concept. But
yes, but I didn't push the artist to make sonics work. I was like, you're allowed to make whatever. I will hold it. But it's always exciting when things pop up and you're like, okay, there's a thread happening,
So there was a lot of kind of response on this, maybe on the concepts.
But
it seems.
But I also then invited artists to, like Sisonke Papo, like his work is around the sonics. In Kimang Wahulere's work, there's a film, and he has co-written and produced a jazz album with Mandla Mlangeni, and one of the songs in that video is that composition.
Another guy showed up.
I don't know who he gave the food to.
Oh, he said delivered?
The name of the thing is Lola Anubis.
And I told the guy, I said, give it to me.
Yes, I said, if you give him the pin,
he said, there's no pin. I said, give me.
There's a pin.
Go straight into it.
You okay? You okay? I don't know. Can you order meals because then you can track it? Because I'm moving around so much. Yeah.
Sorry about you. It's frustrating.
Yeah, and I need the ginger for my throat.
Oh Okay, let's try to wrap it up because there's a lot of things going on here. So I had one thought I wanted to ask you about yesterday, because if you go through the exhibition, there's this idea that several of the artists we want to show something which has been not shown, or which has caused a lot of trauma or has been suppressed, and then we are trying to show it by showing it. But I want to try, how do you think about this relationship? Because somehow it is very difficult to show the unseen, because it is unseen. Or how do we kind of rebel? Because of course it's a consequence of history that there are things who has been marginalized, who have been shattered, but then we want to have it in the center of our attention. And how do we do that? Because somehow it happened. And you cannot just unhappen it, but you can still maybe do something about it.
I mean, we make exhibitions for those who can. Right? Like for those of us who can, because not all of us exist in this way. I think when a space is co-created where people feel that there's a certain level of safety, because there is no safe. There's no, how we always speak of like, is this a safe space? There is no safe space. But we can create conditions in a space that can hold the things that we want to do. And I think what we've done here with the Triennale is to create those conditions to be able to hold the kinds of things that the artist wants to talk about. It's almost like looking at art in darkness.
In what?
In darkness. It's like looking at art in darkness, where you have to train your eyes to have a condition to see
I don't know if she's
where there's no light.
Thank you very much. And good luck with Triennale.
Triennale, yeah. Thank you.
You have listened to a bonus track by Foreignness and Friendship. If you have built up an appetite for more, then you can follow us on thewhiteafricanblogspot.com and walk in our footsteps by stepping into In My Footstep WordPress.com. We broadcast new episodes of our radio show every first Tuesday of the month, available on your preferred platforms.